I don't think it's a bad thing for a student to include that as a clinical experience in their activities. I think what you have to do is be true to yourself and not make it sound like something that it's not.
Well, we just got a whole bunch of people asking to join MAP, so maybe they want to watch this live. So I'm going to duck off screen and go approve their permission.
Go let them in.
All right.
All right. So let's look at this question here. Can we assume our readers have both our personal statement when they read our secondaries? Both our personal statement. I'm assuming both our personal statement and ECs when they read our secondaries.
Yeah.
I don't plan to refer to my personal statement in any way. However, I wanted to share experiences that were not directly related to medicine. In that sense, is it okay for our experiences in secondaries to not be medically related, since we mentioned most of those in the personal statement? I have some thoughts.
Yeah, go for it.
So in my right, the general answer is almost always every medical school will do it differently, right? What one reviewer has is going to be different from another reviewer. And even if they have everything, right? They have your personal statement, extracurricular, secondaries, they may have a process where they're like, I want to avoid all looking at those things and I only want to look at these things. Yeah. So in terms of that, right? The process is the process that's specific to the school, specific to the admissions committee, specific to the reviewer themselves. Now, it's interesting. In my mind, secondaries are the easiest part of the application. And in my mind, the reason for that is secondaries are asking a very specific question. And students will try to get so fancy that my biggest feedback when I'm reviewing secondaries is, you didn't answer the question, right? You got so fancy, like, I need to tell this story, and you didn't answer the question. Answer the question. And if you can make it into a story and whatever, great. If not, answer the question.
Yep.
So, yeah.
No, I completely agree with that. It's very specific to the school, and it's very specific within the school to whoever's reading it. And whether it's a reviewer or an interviewer in terms of what they have access to. I think most schools, the reviewer at the very least has your personal statement and potentially your statements from the secondaries as well. But I don't know that you can count on that necessarily. So I don't think you want to build too much your secondaries off of something else.
Yep.
You want to make it stand on its own and definitely have it answer the prompt. I mean, that's my biggest gripe with a lot of students is I look at the prompt and I look at what they wrote and I think you didn't answer the prompt.
You didn't answer the question.
You didn't answer it. So.
Yeah. Yeah. The individual documents, as much as possible, students really need to understand that the personal statement is an individual document. Your extracurriculars are an individual document. Your secondaries are individual documents. I'll have students, like I was reviewing one student, I'm like, well, you don't have shadowing in your extracurricular activity list. Why don't you have that? I'm like, I put it in my personal statement. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Right? But that's okay. Live and learn, and that's what we're here to educate and help students figure
now,
out.
I will say too that it is important for students to be consistent in all these documents. And the last thing you want to do is have a reader read your personal statement and then read something else and think, well, that seems to be
a different person.
Different. I'm unclear of what's going on here.
Yeah.
So you want to be consistent. You want to see it as a big package, and that it is your marketing package that you're marketing yourself.
Yep.
So be consistent. Definitely.
Yeah. I literally just got off of a podcast interview with a student who I helped a few years ago, and he had life issues come up and kept delaying his application, but finally applied to 40 schools, which is way too many.
Wow.
But he got 34 interview invites.
Gosh.
He went to 21, had 16
Wow.
acceptances.
Wow.
And one of the biggest things that he talked about was the consistency in his story and really
Yeah.
showing who he was
Yep.
as a person, and not, oh, look at my amazing MCAT score and my amazing
Yep.
grades, but really, here's who I am and why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
He said he thinks that was really key, and obviously I helped him with that with his personal statement and his activity lists. But I mean, the stats aren't enough always. Obviously, there are plenty of students with amazing
Whoops.
stats who don't get those those numbers of invites and acceptances. So
I'm sorry, I just clicked
Yeah.
on something and brought it
that's
up.
okay. You're allowed.
I didn't mean to do that.
You're allowed to mess it all up.
Sorry.
All right, here let's do this one. All right, how many schools should one apply to? I remember reading that one should not apply to more than 25. Does this have any basis, or can one apply to more than that?
Well, I think that the schools don't necessarily care
Yeah, I
how
don't
many
care.
schools, how many you're applying to. And in fact, I don't know in AMCAS, I don't think they even know how many you're applying to. In TMDSAS, where I used to be, they do know how many schools you're applying to, and specifically which schools. And then they ask in the application, are you applying through AMCAS also? But
Yeah.
it's not something that they hold against the students. It's not necessarily something they go, oh, well, this applicant's applying to 40 schools. So,
Yeah.
I don't think it's really even a relevant thing. I think the more relevant issue is how much money do you have? And I mean, to be honest,
Yeah.
applying to 40 schools, that guy spent a ton of money.
Lots of money. Yep.
And interviewing at 20 schools, that's an expensive. It's just so. I think the last time I heard from AMCAS, the average number of schools that students applied to, I want to say it was in the 14 or 15 area.
It's up. It's 17 now.
17.
Yeah, it's 17 last I looked. And I go to a dark place when I think of the AAMC and AMCAS and everything, right? Over the last 3 or 4 years since I've been paying attention to those numbers, it was at 14,
Yeah.
and then 15, and then 16, and now it's 17. And the same thing is happening with ARIS as well for the residency applications. Students are
Yeah.
applying to more and more and more residencies. And right, when one of the first times, I don't think it was the first time we met. Was Toronto the first time we met in person? I think it was.
No, I think we met before that, but it may have been. I don't remember.
When we met in Toronto, and I gave a talk at the admissions summit about transparency
Yep.
and getting medical schools to be more transparent. I think, right, and this is the dark side of me, I think that the AAMC has advantage isn't the right word. They have I can't think of the right word. It's too it's too late in the day. They have a benefit to not be transparent with the medical school's stats, right? The cutoffs. They have. I can't think of the word. Anyway, they had.
I get it.
They have this bias to not be as transparent as possible,
Right.
because then students apply to more schools.
Right.
And every school that a student applies to, AAMC gets more money,
Yep.
right? So even going from, right, if you look at going from 14 to 17, which is the last 3 or 4 years, it's increased. That's 3 extra schools per student. And I think last time I looked, it was about 52,000 students applying.
Wow.
So 52,000 times 3 is 156,000 extra applications going out, right?
Yep.
Roughly. Times, what is it, $37 or 40
Right.
times $40, whatever, right?
Yeah, right.
$6 million, Scott. It's just it's just a couple million.
Yes.
Like,
Yes. It's
so I don't know, right?
Now-
Is that why they're not transparent? I don't know, but
it certainly doesn't hurt.
it doesn't hurt.
Now, to put a plug in for the Texas schools and
love
the
Texas.
way we do things in Texas, TMDSAS has a flat fee.
Yep.
For it doesn't matter if you apply to one school or all the schools, it's a flat rate. So it doesn't benefit them any at all financially for you to, because the way we always looked at it was we're doing this essentially the same amount of work for one school as we are for every school.
Exactly.
But there's no extra steps. There's no extra anything. It's all data that's being done by a computer that's dumping it out to the schools or whatever. So, I think that's the legit, the upfront, the sort of, can we even say ethical way to do it?
Yeah.
But,
I think so.
I'm just putting that out there.
Putting it out there. Right. in a COMIS, right? So let's speak. So we talked WMC, we talked TMDSAS. A COMIS is a little bit different because they use a third-party vendor, right, for their application.
Right.
And so the money goes to the third-party vendor for the most part, and not to a COMIS or ACOM. So a little bit different there. But anyway, so you can apply to 170 schools if you want to. It's only a financial barrier at that point. I typically recommend no more than 25 just because there's so much work. And so that maybe that's where the student got 25 from. Yeah. Because
when you start adding on all those secondaries, not only is there the secondary fee, but it's just a lot of work.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right.
It is. Yeah. Yep. Appexpenses.com. If you go to appexpenses.com, that's the I have a calculator on my website for calculating what's applying to medical school is going to be estimated at. So
good idea.
Yes.
Good idea.
Look at that. All right.
Magic.
All right. So with universities moving to limit in-person classes next semester, will medical schools accept online lab courses? Yeah, I think medical schools are going to have to adjust for years.
Yeah. I mean, if the medical schools are having to make adjustments to their own curriculum, then, they're going to be enormously flexible with students coming in with online stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think a lot of students are worried about, right? I have to take my freshman chemistry lab online, but I'm not applying for obviously 3 years. Right. Are they still going to accept? I'm like, yes. Like medical schools are going to have these kind of adjusted policies in place until all of the COVID students get through the process.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. Completely.
Can you keep saying that, Scott? I really like you're right. You're right. I agree.
You are exactly right. You're
amazing.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Now, let me just hasten to add that I've been right since the day I was born.
I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken. All right. So let's see. Let's go to this one here. I'm looking into a sexual assault hotline that is area specific. When you get a call from someone who is going to report it or get a workup at a hospital, you go into the hospital police station and meet with them. Have you heard of anything like this? Super excited about it, but I feel it may be too good to be true. Any thoughts on this? That's interesting. I obviously have heard of crisis hotlines, sexual assault hotlines, but it seems like a little bit of a hybrid of you are the kind of first responder from a phone call standpoint and the person to go meet them. I think that's amazing.
Well, I think it's amazing. I would hope that there's an intense amount of training that goes on for that.
Yep.
But it sounds pretty cool to me. It also sounds emotionally incredibly draining.
Hugely.
So, I mean, I had a friend who was on a suicide hotline, had trained to go through that. After his first call, which did not go well, by the way, he quit because he couldn't handle it. Just the emotional damage and baggage.
Yeah. That kind of stuff is hard. From a phone call. It's actually interesting when you said that. The first thing I thought of was it's probably very similar to what we're seeing, when I say we, back when I was in the military as a flight surgeon, what we're seeing from drone pilots. So
Oh, wow.
the
Yep.
the situation of being on a suicide hotline, a crisis hotline, sexual assault hotline, whatever it may be, is you're either at home getting a phone call or answering a computer call, whatever it is,
Right.
or you go into a central call location. It's very similar to this. Like, I'm going to war, right? I'm going to have these traumatic events, or talking to people going through traumatic events, and then I'm gonna go home.
Yeah.
Right. And we're seeing this with drone pilots. There's this huge disconnect between deploying as a pilot and going overseas and being in Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever we are in way too many places,
Right.
being at war, knowing, right, I'm at war day and night, and then I get to go home, versus being a drone pilot where you go into a box here in the United States, you fly around, you do some terrible things, and then you go home and have dinner with your family. There's a huge disconnect that drone pilots are really struggling with.
Right. It makes total sense that would be the case. And but getting back to the question, I think it sounds awesome. Number one, if it does exist, if there's a lot of training involved, and if you feel like you can handle it on an emotional level.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's one where I would make sure that either the service that you're working for provides you services as well to be able to talk through all of that stuff, or you go and be able to talk with other people about it.
Right.
That's interesting. I would, for that student who asked that question, if you can let us know either privately or publicly who that service is, so that we can send other students potentially to them for other students who need experience. I think that's an awesome thing.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions there, Rachel?
Yeah, this one.
There we go.
There we go. Wow. Is it better to ask a professor for a letter of recommendation as soon as you finish their course, even though you won't be applying for another year? Or is it better to ask the professor for the letter the year you're applying, even though you may not have communicated with the professors? Well, so the easy answer to this is you got to keep communicating with the professor.
There you go. Who said you can't keep
I
communicating with them?
know. I mean, I'd go by their office, say hi. I would email them, hey, just wanted to check in, or go by their class. Or, don't be don't stalk them or anything, but especially if you've really connected with them, I keep in touch. That's the key there. I don't think you ask for a letter if it's a year ahead of time. They're going to forget, or they're going to not, whatever. It's just awkward.
Yep.
But I think you keep in touch with them. You go by their office hours just to say hi, just to, tell them what's going on with you and stuff like that, and just keep in contact with them so they know who you are.
Yep. And
then you're ready to ask for that letter later on.
Yeah.
But I think a year ahead of time is probably a little much.
Yeah. So the general kind of feedback that I give the students is set the expectation, right? Always be transparent about your expectations. And even from the beginning, right, of saying, like, hey, Professor Smith, I know it's the beginning of the year. I'm really excited about your class. I'm planning on applying to medical school in a few years, and I think I would probably love a letter of recommendation from you.
Yeah,
obviously,
absolutely.
hopefully you have a little bit of a relationship to even start there, but don't wait until the very last day to go, hey, Professor Smith, can I get a letter of recommendation? And they're like, who are you? Right?
Yeah.
So you're setting that expectation, and then you're even asking, like, what are things that I can potentially do to get a better letter of recommendation from you, or things that I can do to continue to kind of stay in contact with you. But even from an expectation standpoint of hey, Professor Smith, I'm not applying for a few years. I'd love to stay in contact with you
Yeah.
over the next couple of years. I'll email you once a semester, maybe keep you up to date with what I'm up to, and ask for a letter of recommendation when I'm ready to apply. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And most faculty are going to say, "Oh, sure," especially if you've kind of established a rapport with them already.
Yeah, you
sure.
are not the first person that's likely going to ask for a letter of recommendation, so
No,
they
no.
know the game.
And if you are, that's a little concerning.
It could be a brand new professor.
Oh, well, okay, that's true.
Everyone's got to start somewhere. I'm sure this has been mentioned before, but if we're having a hard time getting recent shadowing experience due to COVID, could virtual meetings with physicians count where they mentor one-on-one and talk about their specialties? Yeah, this virtual shadowing thing is becoming more and more popular.
Yeah. No, I definitely think it's an option that you have to take advantage of, because there's not a whole lot that you're going to be able to do with COVID around. I mean, there's some enormous limitations on what you're going to be able to do, and I think that kind of experience, a one-on-one kind of mentorship sort of thing, it does limit you in terms of what you're seeing with patient care and patient interaction, but it does still give you a lot of information from the physician. It gives you a lot of ability to ask them questions and to bounce stuff off of them, and for them to introduce you to what they do on a daily basis or whatever. I'm always of the mind that you do whatever they'll let you do, even in the non-COVID situation. Whatever they'll let you do, if they'll let you follow them around, if they'll let you work in their office and every now and then, see what's going on, or anything that you can do to get that patient contact, to get contact with that physician, I think it's an awesome experience, and certainly within the context of COVID, it's I would say that would be fantastic if you can do that.
Yeah. I mean, look, shadowing is probably the least exciting and least beneficial thing in the grand scheme of things, right? It's exciting. Students love it because they're like, oh my God, I'm finally I'm in a clinic or I'm in the hospital. Right. But it's for the majority of students, it's super passive, and you're just kind of staring into space the whole time, watching the doctor talk to patients. You literally can get more information watching ER and watching House. Right. So these one-on-one phone calls, that's the benefit of shadowing, is that connection with the physician, asking questions. Sure. It's not literally being in the room. It's just fun. It's just fun.
Yeah.
That's all. Just fun.
Absolutely. And I think the thing about COVID and all this is that medical schools, just like we were talking about with the courses, medical schools are going to realize that this puts a big problem in terms of students getting volunteer experiences or shadowing experiences or whatever. That's not going to be lost on them. They're going to take that into consideration. But I think the point here is creativity. If you're creative and you find solutions and you create things that are going to be solutions for that, such as what this student has suggested, I think that's going to be really seen as a lot more valuable. That's the kind of student I would want to see, is, wow, look at what they did in the context of all this. Look at what they created. Look at what they managed to develop with this physician or these series of physicians or whatever. So creativity counts.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Is there a consolidated information regarding indebtedness and residency match for medical schools? Thank you. Consolidated. I don't think there's consolidated. Right, we have kind of average indebtedness that we know of. I think medical schools keep track of the average indebtedness of their students. But I don't think that's published anywhere.
I think it's a case-by-case basis with medical schools. I know a lot of them will say, particularly those that are on the low end, they really like to, say, oh, yeah, our indebtedness is 30% lower than anybody else or whatever.
Bragging rights.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I definitely think, I don't think that what you're looking for is sort of this clearinghouse of information. Nationally. I don't know that exists.
My question would be, why is that important? So average indebtedness, to me, And it's got to be interested to hear your thoughts. When I talk to students about picking medical schools, I never say pick a medical school based on tuition costs, right? What
Right.
the annual budget is. If you have multiple acceptances and you're choosing between financial aid packages at different ones, great. Go to the one that is the best fit and is the cheapest.
Yes.
But from I'm going to go and pick and make my school list based on the cost, then there's a school that's maybe $5,000 a year over the arbitrary line that you set that would have been the best fit for you, that would have made you succeed, that would have helped you matched into a more prestigious match or specialty or whatever it is, and your salary is going to be $50,000 a year more because of that. And now all of a sudden, the $20,000 that you didn't want to spend over the course of 4 years, that is like $10 a month over the course of your payments or whatever it is, right, is all out the window. So it's obviously being on this side of it, it sounds like flippant to go, don't worry about the money. But really, when you look at the big picture, it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
Now, obviously, between a Texas school and a $70,000 a year private school, that's a huge difference. And obviously there's some things at play there. But so that's from the financial side. From the match side, again, I always talk to students, don't pick a school based on the match list.
Right.
The school doesn't determine the match list. The students applying to residency determine the match list.
Yep.
And I give this example all the time. We had a professor at New York Medical College who students loved. She was a radiologist. She was the radiology program director. Students loved her. And students would apply to residency, to radiology residency, because of her. Right? They would go, oh, I came in wanting to do this one thing, but you're awesome. I want you as a mentor. I'm going to apply to radiology now because of you. And so you have these skewed pockets of specialties at different schools based on the mentors available.
Yeah.
And in my Specialty Stories podcast, right, I talk to all of these physicians about the specialty they chose. And Scott, it's like 90% of them are like, I had an amazing mentor who practiced this specialty. And I was like, oh, this is a really cool specialty. I think I want to look into that too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, and you've probably mentioned this before, that my latest information was that somewhere around 75% of students, when they enter, they think this, and then they exit and they're doing something totally different than what they thought.
Perfect point. Yep.
Yeah, they came in thinking, I'm going to be a surgeon and I'm going to rock and roll, and they leave being a psychiatrist or something.
And they picked their school based on the match list for the specialty they thought they wanted to do, and now they wanted to do something else.
Something
and that
totally
other
different.
school that they,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it gets into the overthinking part of it a lot, and I think you don't overthink. You look at basics, but I'm a real advocate when you're looking at schools. You got to determine fit, and I think that this is the kind of thing where it doesn't go well on an Excel spreadsheet.
No.
You can keep track of a lot on an Excel spreadsheet. What you can't keep track on there is your intuition about how did I feel about this school.
Yeah.
When I went to interview there, when I talked to the students at that school, what feeling did I get? Did I feel like this is a place I could be, or did I feel whatever? So I feel I'm very much a proponent of journaling after you interview at a school, and journal about how did I feel about the school? When I walked on the campus, how did I feel about it? When I was in the neighborhood where it was, how did I feel about it? How did I feel when I was talking to the faculty or the students or whatever?
Yeah.
And just get out of your head a little bit and get into your heart a little bit, and really think about that. So, yeah.
Rachel, make a note for Mapped. I don't think we have that anywhere on our list about kind of tracking interviews and
I'm gonna
post-interview discussions. That's definitely needs to be included.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting. I think schools do a disservice because mission and vision statements get very generic, and like every student's like, I've read all of the vision statements, the mission statements, they all sound alike after like the first 10.
Yeah.
And so I know we have talked privately about doing a podcast where we reach out, we talk to the deans of admissions, director of admissions, the deans of the school, to get more personal and really try to get the culture, the heart of the school out, and out off of just a website.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So stay tuned.
Agreed.
Oh. When you say how important a strong upward trend can be, how many credits, years, semesters minimum should reflect this?
800.
42. The answer is 40.
Yeah.
Always 42. Right. So students needing to recover from poor GPA, poor grades, whatever it may be. It's a very common question. Like, how long do I need to get into this grade repair mode? Is it 1 year? Is it a certain number of credits? What does that look like?
Yeah. To me, I think it depends a little bit on the bigger picture of the student. I don't know that there's a certain number that you can say, well, you need this many semesters or you need this many credits or whatever to be able to recover or to show that there's that trend. I think it really depends a lot on the student and what the trend previous has looked like, and what their story is. Was there some event that happened that caused the problems that now the trend is 3 semesters and wow, you're great and everything's, things have really turned around and it's a very clear of a before event and an after event. And so I think it depends a little bit on that. Now, what I would say, in general, this is kind of a broad general statement, but I would say in general, that the more is always better. The more credits you have with on a trend, or the more credits you have as a postbac, for example, the more credible that trend is going to be, that more credible that new postbac GPA is going to be. I used to see a lot of students who would come in and say, oh, I've really picked things up. I've got 12 hours of really great work. And I would always say that's fantastic. Number one, that is fantastic. But number two is you had 120 hours of bad stuff. 12 hours is great, but there's got to be there's got to be a little bit more going on there. So I think it depends a little bit on the student and on the event and kind of what the picture is here. But generally, I would say more is better.
Yeah. It's funny, as you were talking about that, the thing that popped into my mind was looking at COVID graphs and more darkly the COVID death graphs. If you go and look at COVID deaths over the course of this pandemic, the weekends always have very little deaths because hospitals don't work as much on weekends. I'm like, the body doesn't care what day of the week it is, right? Why do hospitals actually observe weekends? But anyway, the deaths go down, and so it's almost like that same thing of like, oh look, my grades are better, right? The deaths have gone down, and then Monday hits, you're like, oh wait, never mind. You need that sustained
exactly
trend there.
Yep.
There's another question that came in that we can't pop up on screen. It's a very common question about being a personal caregiver, primary caregiver for a family member or a friend, and whether or not that should go in the clinical experience section, whether or not they could count it as clinical experience, or should they only mention that potentially in a personal statement if it was a meaningful experience.
Yeah, that's a good, I mean, this is not unusual. Students will be caregivers for, sometimes it's a sibling, sometimes it's a grandparent or a parent, or, and, often these are pretty dire situations where the family member is, disabled, perhaps, there's a variety of things, but, you could be giving injections, you could be certainly doing vital signs, You could be doing, there's a lot of different things that might be going on there that would really count as clinical experience. And I think, to me, I don't ever say, okay, yes or no necessarily. I think in order for a student, I don't think it's a bad thing for a student to include that as a clinical experience in their activities. I think what you have to do is be true to yourself and not make it sound like something that it's not. So if you're very clear on what it was, what you did, and what you got out of it, that's the key.
Yep.
It's not about, oh, they're going to think this, or they're going to, you don't know what they're going to think.
Yep.
You can't live your life. You can't create your application based on what you think somebody's going to think that you've never even met before. So I think be honest about your experiences, why you included it in your activities, clinical activities. And if you want to bounce off of that and talk about it a little bit more in an essay, a personal statement, or something like that, then that's fine. It gives you the ability to explore it more than you have in those 300 characters or whatever in the activity list. And then obviously, if this was a very meaningful experience for you, and it's going to go in that list of most meaningful experiences that you've had, then you have even a little bit more ability to go into it more so. But I've seen this quite a few times on applications where students really, and I would say more times than not, it makes total sense to me why they would include it in there based on what they're saying about it. So, Ryan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. And the AAMC has even said, right, 5 kind of more uncommon clinical experiences is being a caregiver for a loved one or a friend or whatever. And it was something that I did when I was rejected the first time around to medical school. One of the things that I was missing was clinical experience. I didn't really know what it was or knew the importance of it. And so when I moved out here to Colorado after I graduated from University of Florida, I was a live-in caregiver for a family friend who she had undergone hip surgery, I think. So long ago, I have a terrible memory. Hip surgery, and needed someone to help take care of her cats, and some other stuff. And that was a big experience for me to take care of someone. And then I shadowed an orthopedic surgeon and got some other experiences too.
And the other thing about the caregiver thing, depending a little bit on the extent, like for what you're describing, Ryan, I mean, that was a big commitment on your part. This was not a minor thing. You were a live-in caregiver, and you were, definitely taking care of that person in a variety of different ways, which is a big commitment, as opposed to, well, my grandmother needs her medication every morning, and so I'm going to get her pills already and take, that's not to downplay that experience, but it is to say that it depends on what the situation is as to how much you want to talk about it and how meaningful it really could have been for you. Yeah.
It's interesting, right? We always go back to the same thing of like, oh, I did this. Is this clinical experience? And I'm like, I don't know, right? What did you do? Tell me specifically. And so being a caregiver could be like me, where I'm a live-in helping out as much as possible, versus caregiver was, oh, I just needed help grandma clean up around the house, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or give pills or do the grocery shopping. I'm a caregiver. So it's all about what did you do?
Yeah, exactly.
This is an interesting one.
It is.
This is an interesting one. For future physicians who do not want to be forced to see patients under a time constraint, where do you recommend they find a job after residency?
It's called you're a self-employed physician and you control it yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, boy, you probably, definitely know a lot more about this, Ryan, than I do. But my mind is, the trend in medicine, just as it is in dentistry and a variety of other health professions, is corporate. Is the corporations are taking over clinics, they're taking over hospitals, they're taking over, a variety of different healthcare settings. And so that corporation or that the management is going to dictate how long that patient contact can last. And they're going to hold you accountable for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are somebody that wants to control that, seemingly you don't want to be in a situation where, maybe you want to go out and somewhere and create your own, clinic and do your own thing, so you can control that.
Yeah.
Or you don't want to be in it. So, I mean, that's my initial thought, but I'm sure, Ryan, you've got a lot more thoughts about that.
Yeah. In today's day and age, right? And I have literally gone through this with my wife, who went from working at Kaiser, right? A big center where you're an employee and you're told what your schedule is and how many patients you're going to see to make the money to pay for your salary, to her going and opening up her own private practice. And she opened up a private practice with, so my wife's a neurologist. She opened up a private practice or however you want to call it, with a internal medicine physician who was also looking at opening up her own practice. And so the two of them got together and said, hey, we both want to open up practices. Let's share resources, right?
Yeah.
Let's find a place and you can pay for one room out of the three, and we can split costs with our front desk person and with our medical assistant and everything else. Even with that, right? The ability to get money from the insurance companies and what you're able to charge insurance companies and all of the overhead of needing to rent the space and pay the salaries and do everything else. My wife,
pressure.
She wasn't taking home any money. She was seeing patients to pay everyone to be able to see patients, right? She would have done just as well making zero money staying at home doing nothing. With zero risk involved, right? And not all of the extra work. Medicine is crazy in that way. And so if you're going into this and you want to not have any time constraints, know that you're probably not going to make a lot of money, if any. And it's possible. There's concierge medicine that is becoming more and more popular, where you kind of charge like a membership fee, or the patients pay a membership fee to be able to be part of the small number of people that you're able to see, and then you see that small cohort of people. It's hard. That's not what medicine is right now.
Yeah, and that's not a population of people that a lot of students want to. They're looking at. I want to reach out to people who don't have resources.
Yep.
Concierge medicine, that's not what that is.
Nope. Yeah.
Yep. Big questions.
Medical school I'm interested in offers an MD MBA program. Given just how much business and medicine is intertwined these days, is it worth it to also go for this extra business learning, or can you learn most of the business aspects while on the job? I like this question.
I'm going to give you that one, Ryan.
Yeah, so it depends on what the goal is, right? What's the end goal? Do you just want to have business knowledge? You don't need the MBA. If you want to go and be an executive at a hospital, then having the MBA will give you that street cred, which isn't street cred, it's a diploma, the school cred, to be able to open some doors, right? And it might be a requirement to say, hey, we're looking for physicians who do have an MBA to fill this position. Right. For me, I run two businesses for the most part. I don't have an MBA. I learn on the job, right? And I learn what I need to learn. I think an MBA is only useful if your career aspirations lead you to the world where an MBA is going to open doors for you.
Yeah. And there are in a lot of metropolitan areas in particular, there are MBA programs that are designed specifically for practicing physicians. So you can that are tailored for not that dual MD MBA programs aren't, but I don't think there is much. And I think that what the benefit is for practicing physicians getting an MBA that is really crafted very specifically for them is it can be beneficial in a lot of different ways, particularly as you do exactly what you were saying, Ryan, as you know, going along, even more so what your goals are, what your career aspirations are, what you want that profession for yourself to look like. You're going to know that more and more as you go along. And so I would say, MD, MBA programs are fine. There's several in Texas where I'm at. They're not uncommon around the country. And, if it interests you, sure, why not? But, and some of, you have to look at this, some of them add another year to the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 4+1. Others, they kind of do it along the way, which makes it really tough, I think. And so they, fold it all into still a 4-year curriculum. But so I think, if you want to work, you're already working your butt off in medical school. If you want to work your butt off even more, then
why not?
Yeah, right.
What you were mentioning, the one specifically for physicians, if you want to Google that to get some information, it's called a physician executive MBA. It's a very small subset of MBA programs. And then there's this other thing that has been more popularized within the last several years called the certified physician executive.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to an MBA, but it's not an MBA. It's this other kind of certification program for those who want to be leaders in healthcare, where they teach you. It's very obviously very specific for physicians as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Am I ready? When will it be starting? Soon.
Yeah. We're excited about it.
Yep.
It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yep. That's where you apply mappd.com/ready to submit your application. It will take some time to go through. I'm excited, Scott, as we were working through this, I'm excited to be able to have students who are on Mappd, right, tracking all of their stuff on Mappd, go, hey, I want to be part of Am I Ready? And they just like, here's access to my Mappd information.
That'd be awesome.
We can show it all. It'd be so good. Right now, you have to fill out a stinky Google form, but that's how we'll do it.
Yeah, it's soon.
Yeah, well, we'll probably record our first batch here in the next probably 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's super exciting to me. I'm pumped about this. Awesomeness.
You're gonna be a superstar, Scott. You're you're a YouTube star, podcast star, blogging star.
Oh, it's exciting. She says that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be awesome for sure.
I think so.
Good.
I think those are all the questions. Should we wrap up now?
Yeah, we're almost to the end of the hour anyway, and so
yeah. Let's take 2 seconds. I'm going to show a new feature on Mappd.
Yes.
Since we're here, let me log in, make sure I can share my screen here. So this new feature, it's a small thing, but it's one that we're like, why can't we do this? So here's my Mappd account, and if you're watching this and you haven't seen us play with Mappd yet, so this is what Mappd looks like right now. It's still very bare bones for the most part, but this was a fun thing that we did just recently, to where we'll be able to track your practice scores, your MCAT scores.
Yep.
So you can come in here, and we're gonna polish up this interface and say, okay, I got a 130 on Chem Phys. I got a 130 on Cars because I'm awesome. 130 on Biochem, and Psych Soc is terrible, so I only got a 126. Right? It has your score there, and we need to put in percentiles. We'll figure all this out. But then we say, oh, this was just my practice test, right? And then you can go, oh, this was a Kaplan practice test. It was full length 4, and so we'll be able to track all this stuff too. And again, through kind of the algorithm on what we're doing, we can go, hey, like your MCAT is in 2 weeks, and your practice scores you haven't crossed 500 yet. Have you thought about delaying your application or delaying your MCAT?
Right.
And we'll be able to give some information around that.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Super excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great.
If you're watching this, do you want to see something in Mappd while I have it open here? Just have a couple more minutes we could do.
Yeah.
There's another question that popped up.
Yeah,
Let's
it
go
just
ahead
popped
and
up.
answer this here. How much overlap should there be between a regular personal statement and the MD PhD dual degree personal statement? Ooh, I like this question because it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there probably should not be much of an overlap, depending on, I guess I don't understand if it depends on the school in terms of what they're doing.
Well, Scott, let me clarify a little bit. I bet you this student is asking the question not realizing that there's 2 extra essays on the MD PhD application.
Right. Yeah, maybe not. Because, I think the key here is that what MD PhD programs are looking at is not only, they're mostly interested in what does your research experience look like? What have you done in terms of research? And almost always, particularly with the NIH funded, the medical scientist training program, MD PhD programs. And if you don't know what that means, then you need to find out what that means, because there's a key difference between the two.
Yep.
The NIH funded programs as opposed to those that are not NIH funded. But what they're looking for is not only what is the basic science research you've done. What does that look like? But they are mostly interested in, do you get it? Do you understand what it was you were doing? And you'd be surprised how often MD PhD programs look at a student that's got a lot of research and they don't really have a clue what it was that they were doing. Yeah. They're very mechanically oriented in terms of mechanically, I was doing this and I was doing that, and I was doing this and I was doing that, but they never really got the full picture of what this was all about.
Yeah. Why did you pick that?
Yeah, why was I doing that? Why was I, and so that's the key. It's not just research, it's about what you understood about what you were doing that they're looking for. And that's where the MD PhD essay or series of essays, depending on the schools and stuff, that's what they're looking for. Because they got lots of applicants who have done X, Y, and Z. Yeah. But they're looking for X, Y, and Z, and they want to know that you know what X, Y, and Z is all about. Yep. So that's the key.
Yeah, the MD PhD, it's interesting because you're applying almost to 2 different institutions, right? Yeah. The PhD side of it and the MD side of it, and you have to get both people to sign off on you. In my mind, the personal statement is the same. It's, why do you want to be a doctor, right? Yep. Period. Yep. And then when you're applying dual degree, the PhD, it's like basically, why do you want to be an MD PhD? Yeah. And then you have your most significant research experience essay as well. Right. So
that's right. Exactly right.
Yeah. When Dr. Gray shared his screen of Mapped, is that what we have access to in the fall once Mapped is officially launched? Yeah, so that is Mapped. So this lovely piece of tech here, when you get access to it, and it may be a little bit different as we work through and fix bugs and offer suggestions on what we're doing, but this will be the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting.
All right, let's wrap up. If there were some extra questions we didn't get to, hopefully next week we can get to them.
Absolutely.
Another awesome Ask the Dean. Thank you, Dr. Scott Wright.
Dr. Ryan Gray.
Fun times.
Yeah, fun times. And thank you, Rachel Groves, in the background for all that you do. You're a sweetheart.
The original RG. Although I'm the original RG because I'm older, so I think I'm older. Am I older?
I love that you think that.
I thought I was older than you. No?
No. You were born in the 80s, right?
I was born in 80, yeah.
Yeah, no.
No.
You're both children as far as I'm concerned.
I was born the year Star Wars came out.
Let me guess. That was
77?
Yeah, 77.
I'm a nerd
so I'm
for
just
knowing
a little bit older than you.
Just a little bit.
Well,
we got Boomer over there.
Yeah. Oh, shut up.
He's technically Gen X like me. I'm right on the edge.
No, I'm right on the. I'm right. I'm still a boomer, barely a boomer. I am a
Okay.
little bit, but I was born in '63, the year of the Kennedy assassination. So I was actually born very close to the Kennedy assassination. So
You were also born the year that started. Can you see my TARDIS up there? Doctor Who.
no. Oh,
Doctor-
right.
Doctor
That's
Who first
right.
aired on the
Yeah.
Kennedy assassination date. Anyway, listeners, thank you so much for
Yeah,
listening.
we love you.
Sure.
We love you. We love you.
See you next week. Go
Bye,
ahead. I'll
guys.